You know, when you think about the U.S. Constitution and its Bill of Rights, it's easy to see it as this uniquely American flash of genius, right? Like it just popped into existence in the 1700s. But what if I told you that's not the whole story? That its real blueprint, its core DNA, was actually coded over 100 years earlier, an ocean away, all because of a fight with a king. Yeah, let's get into it.
So, if the American founders didn't just invent these rights out of thin air, where on earth did they come from? Well, the answer lies in this incredibly dramatic power struggle that completely reshaped the English monarchy forever.
And check this out. This really shows what I'm talking about. I love this concept of the DNA of rights. You can literally trace a direct genetic line from that old English scroll in 1689 all the way to We the People in 1791. These weren't just, kind of similar ideas. No, these were the actual building blocks, passed down, adapted, and then supercharged for a brand new world.
Okay, so to really get how this all happened, we need to rewind. We're going back to a major crisis point in England, a moment where the whole idea of a king having total, absolute power was about to completely shatter.
Picture this, it's 1688. England is just in chaos. It's a Protestant country, for the most part, but the king, James II, he's Catholic, and he's actively trying to drag the country back to Catholicism. Things get so bad, so tense, that he's actually kicked off the throne, deposed. And just like that, there's a huge power vacuum. Nobody's in charge.
So, who fills the void? Parliament steps up. They've got an idea. They go to a new Protestant pair, William and Mary, and say, hey, want the crown? But, and this is the big but, the absolute game changer, it's not a freebie, it comes with conditions, big ones. Before they could be king and queen, they had to agree to a contract, a whole list of rights for the people that they, the monarchs, could never violate.
And that contract, that became the English Bill of Rights of 1689. And listen, this wasn't some friendly suggestion. It was a brick wall, a legal barrier against absolute power. It was the first time ever that a monarch's power was officially limited by a written law. It basically forced the crown and parliament to work together, a totally new way of doing things.
So what was actually in this thing? What was in this revolutionary blueprint? Let's take a look at the key protections that ended up changing the world.
First up, and this is always a big one, money. One of the most important things in the bill was about who controls the cash. It basically said the king can't just dream up new taxes whenever he feels like it. Nope. From now on, the power of the purse, the ability to tax, belonged to Parliament, who were supposed to represent the people. This was huge for holding the king accountable.
Okay, after the purse comes the sword, right? The military. The bill also put some serious limits on the king's army. He wasn't allowed to just keep a massive standing army around in peacetime, not without Parliament's okay. And, this one is really important, it put a stop to the quartering of troops. Forcing regular people to let soldiers live in their homes. A big no-no. So let's just recap the big ones. We've got the right to bear arms for self-defense, civilian control of the military, and that all-important no taxation without representation. Now look at that one about freedom of speech. It's interesting, right? Back then it wasn't for everybody. It was just to protect politicians, members of parliament, so they could debate freely without getting thrown in jail. Keep that detail in your back pocket. And yeah, that last one, no taxation without representation, starting to ring a bell? All right, let's fast forward a bit. We're jumping to the 1760s. Because while people in England are celebrating these newfound rights, something very different is happening for the king's subjects on the other side of the Atlantic.
You see, the American colonists thought of themselves as English. Through and through, they were loyal. So naturally, they expected all the protections from the Bill of Rights to apply to them too. But they were in for a rude awakening. It became pretty clear pretty fast that the rights of an Englishman didn't quite make it across the ocean.
And this comparison just lays it all out perfectly. On one side, you've got the rule from 1689. The people's representatives control the money. On the other side, you've got the reality in America, colonists getting slammed with taxes from a parliament where they had no voice, no vote, nothing. This is it. This is where that thunderous cry, no taxation without representation, comes from.
And it wasn't just about taxes. The double standard was just as bad when it came to the military. That fundamental English right to not have soldiers forced into your home, completely ignored in America. In 1774, Parliament passed the Quartering Act, which did exactly that. It forced colonists to feed and house British soldiers. It was a total slap in the face, a direct violation of a right they thought was guaranteed. So you start to see, right?
The American Revolution wasn't really just about taxes or a tea party. At its very core, it was a fight against this incredible double standard. The colonists looked at these unbalanced scales and realized they were being treated like second-class citizens. They weren't asking for new rights, they were fighting for the rights they believed they were born with as Englishmen.
And that feeling, that sense of betrayal, it's what lit the fuse for a revolution. But here's the twist. The very list of grievances, the rights that were being violated, became the exact blueprint they needed to build a new nation, a nation that would try to finally get it right. So when the Founding Fathers finally got the chance to write their own rulebook, they weren't just staring at a blank piece of paper. Not at all. They pulled out their copy of the English Bill of Rights. That was their starting point, their model. The U.S. Constitution and its own Bill of Rights were basically their effort to lock down all the liberties they felt they should have had all along. But here's the cool part. They didn't just copy and paste. They took these ideas and made them bigger, better. Remember that freedom of speech thing, how it was only for politicians in Parliament? Well, the Americans took that idea and blew it wide open. They said, nope, this isn't just for politicians, this is for everyone. They took it out of the government building and gave it to every single citizen, a truly universal right. Now, some of the other rights, you can see the family resemblance much more clearly. Things like the right to bear arms, or making sure the military answers to civilians, not the other way around, those were carried over almost directly. It just goes to show that deep, shared fear of a government with too much power. The DNA, like I said, is undeniable.
So when you boil it all down, watch the main point. The English Bill of Rights was so much more than just a political document from the 1600s. It was the original template for liberty. It was the first time anyone really put legal limits on a ruler's power, and in doing so, it created the foundation, the intellectual and legal bedrock for what would become the United States of America.
I mean, think about that journey. An idea starts as a set of conditions placed on a king in 1689, and a century later, it evolves into a universal guarantee for every citizen. It's an amazing story of evolution. And it really makes you wonder, right? If liberty could change so much between 1689 and 1791, what will it look like 100 years from now?